G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here, and as you can see, I did not actually succeed in coming back immediately with a whole new movie. Well, I mean, I did. The trouble is I got the video timer counting backwards trick wrong by a factor of 10 seconds because I didn't actually look at the timer when I started the movie, and therefore thus and because the video ran for 15 minutes and 37 seconds and I can't upload any more than 15:29. So we'll just have to do without having Waleed Ali and Scott Stevens go on for about another 12 minutes, maybe 13 minutes, discussing the various intricacies of how they look at this idea of dual citizenship. At no point did they discuss the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room with Section 44 of the Australian Constitution and how it affects people who want to stand for Parliament, the elephant in the room is that some dual citizens are more acceptable than other dual citizens. But all dual citizens are not considered to be equal in Australia. And the easiest way to explain this is that the One Nation voters and the Liberal voters and the National voters, they have no problem at all whatsoever with a One Nation senator whose dual national citizenship status is in dispute because he did not have confirmation of his renouncing of his British citizenship until after he had been elected. So when he was standing for election, he was not actually technically, maybe perhaps the High Court will have to figure that one out, he was maybe not actually eligible to stand for election because dual citizens aren't eligible to sit in Parliament, therefore they're not eligible to stand for Parliament, which is why the Greens lost 2 senators and the Nationals in Queensland are on the brink of losing one because he was an Italian citizen after his mother applied for him to be made one, and he didn't know anything about it, so he says. The thing is, being a New Zealand citizen, being a Canadian citizen, nobody's got any real problems with that because New Zealand and Canada are both Commonwealth dominions. We're all dominoes together, and the Queen of New Zealand is the Queen of Canada, is the Queen of Australia. We're a bit suspicious about this idea of having a dual Italian citizen sitting in Parliament, even if he doesn't realise that he's going to be loyal to Italy because his mummy says he has to do what he's told when he was 25. Italian mothers are a bit like that. It's a matriarchal state. That's why they have vendettas and feuds. So here's the thing. Nobody's really got a problem. I mean, some of the Labor voters will have a problem with the idea of a British citizen wanting to stand in the Australian Parliament because, you know, we're no longer an imperial possession and therefore we should be having our own politicians who are loyal just to Australia. But be that as it may, neither the Liberal Party, the National Party, the One Nation Party, or some of the Labor Party will have a problem with a British or a Canadian or a New Zealand dual citizen. Intrinsically, we're all part of the empire and the empire's after effects, so they're okay. But a Chinese dual citizen, how would we feel if somebody was a dual citizen of the Chinaman and he wanted to sit or she wanted to sit in the Australian Parliament? I think you'll find that there'd be a whole lot of Australians who'd get their knickers twisted at the idea of a Chinese dual national sitting in Australian Parliament and making laws for Australians according to what they were told to do from China. And there's a considerable body of evidence emanating from the Australian security and surveillance industry to the effect that there is a fairly deep-seated and robust Chinese sort of industrial, civil, social intelligence network operating in Australia among its expatriate members of the diaspora. And you've got to recollect that while I think there's maybe 11 Australians who have grown up speaking English and they've finished up developing conversational fluency in Mandarin to the point where they can, you know, get a PhD in a Chinese subject at university. But somehow Mandarin is the second most commonly spoken second language in Australia. It's the most commonly spoken second language in Australian households. There are more households where there are people who speak Mandarin as a second language than speak Arabic, and more people speak Mandarin as a second language in Australia than speak Italian or Greek, Yugoslavian even. It's Vietnamese. It's quite remarkable that that comes up in the census, the last two censuses. Mandarin. That's the big language in Australia. If you don't speak English in the kitchen, you'll be speaking Mandarin, kid. So how do we feel about Chinese Australian dual nationals serving on Australian Parliament? I can see problems with that. Regardless of how I feel about it, and I personally have a bit of an issue with it, I have an issue with anybody being a dual citizen and wanting to serve in the Australian Parliament. I think if you want to stand for election in Australia, you should commit yourself to the nation to the point where you give up all foreign allegiances. I have a couple of cousins who had an American father, and one of them lived in America as a little baby, and they were considered to be dual citizens until they turned either 21 or 25, and then Uncle Spam said, right, mate, shit or get off the pot. Are you Americans living in Australia, or are you Australians living in Australia? And they both gave up their American citizenship because, being an Australian is better in their eyes than being an American, and I bloody agree with them. One of my favourite examples of the perils of dual citizenship is the story of a bloke called Marcus Talkus, who I don't know whether he still lives there, but he used to live about 20 k's to the sort of northwest of here, at the foot of Rumry's Hill, and between Glen Innes and Emerville. Anyway, Marcus Talkus, I met him at a party, Hungy one time, and his story was that his mother was English and his father was Argentinian, right? And he's telling me this story in about 1986. And he reckoned that he'd been living in Australia, and he'd come to Australia from England after he got out of the British Army because he'd had to do national service in England. So therefore he was trained as an English soldier and he was on their reserve list. But because his father was Argentinian, and Argentina runs under the Napoleonic Code of Justice, any man who's an Argentinian citizen, all of his children are automatically Argentine citizens. Whether they've ever been to Argentina or know anything about it, they are Argentinian citizens. And all Argentinian men are obliged to do 2 years of military conscript service between 18 and 35, I suppose. They like them to start at 18. But anyway, because he'd been living outside of Argentina, he'd never received his Argentinian call-up papers until he got them in the same mail as he got his call-up papers from England, who wanted to reactivate his National Service Reserve status because they'd spent a lot of money teaching him how to run around in the boonies and shoot people while carrying a backpack. And the Argentinians, they wanted conscripts to go and put them on what they called the Ilas Los Malvinas, because they wanted all their actual elite, highly trained troops to be back on the mainland in case the British decided to attack the capital city, sort of thing. So the Argentinians wanted him to go out there and sit on one side of the Falkland Islands, the Ilas Los Malvinas, while the British wanted him to invade the Falkland Islands and help recapture them. So he was supposed to go over there and fucking fight himself because of his dual citizenship. So that cemented in my mind the complete pointless ridiculousness of anybody trying to say that while ever there are nation states on earth, they want to be a dual national and they want to claim citizenship rights in multiple countries. I mean, why do you think Rupert Murdoch renounced his Australian citizenship so that he could go to the excited states of Norte Armed Americano? He wanted to go over there because he wasn't allowed to buy any more television and radio stations because he already had a couple of newspapers, and they have laws over there which prevent foreign citizens from owning their media. So he had to renounce his Australian citizenship, go over to the excited states, kiss Uncle Spam's ring, and then Ronald Reagan Zapp, the demented geriatric who was in the White House, he was told that it was a problem for freedom of speech advocates for the Congress to require American national broadcasters and national newspapers anybody who broadcasts or publishes across state boundaries. Congress said they had to limit their news and editorial content to that which could be proved to be true according to the best known science of the time. So it was illegal in America to broadcast bullshit or to print bullshit in your news and your editorial material. That was considered an unfair constraint on free speech. So Ronald Reagan repealed it. And Rupert Murdoch started Fox News, and he's been pouring shit into the American ear holes for 35 years because he can make much more money selling shit because it's more exciting than telling them the truth. And you can sell more ads and charge more money if it's exciting. So yep. Rush Limbaugh, Alex Jones, they've all come to prominence since Ronnie Reagan Zapp, the dementing geriatric, said that it was a freedom of speech issue, that you should be permitted to broadcast bullshit in the news and the editorial material. That's what happens when you let foreign citizens come and naturalise themselves in, what they see as being your own interest. I'm sure if you asked Rupert Murdoch, he'd say he's done America a service by setting up Fox News to set up muddled America to be so incredibly self-centred and ignorant and hubristic and arrogant and hyper-patriotic that they elected Tronald Dump to be their prissy dunce. They've given him the launch codes to 7,600 nuclear warheads. That's what letting a foreign citizen come and masquerade as a naturalised Yank has done for America. I actually, under those circumstances, fully applaud the American idea that you have to be born in America in order to be their prissy dunce. Can you imagine what would have happened if Rupert Murdoch had been able to stand for the Republican Party in his own right if he hadn't have had to run Tronald Dump as a puppet candidate? I mean, they're just about to have a neo-Stalinist purge now against anybody who's got a brain who's left in the White House and the administration. They call them leakers because they tell the truth, because the truth will set you free, but not in Tronald Dump's America. In Tronald Dump's America, telling the truth is about to become a capital offence. You just watch. It's in the pipeline. It's in the pipeline. Tronald Dump's not going to put his tail between his legs and back out gracefully because he knows he can't run the job or the office that he's taken on. Oh no, he's going to fight to the end, and he's going to declare anybody who disagrees with him to be treasonable, seditious, unpatriotic, an enemy of the people, deserving of condemnation without trial. Summary justice. Yeah, he's leading America unto complete balkanisation. It's a bit sad, and there's nothing that I can think of to do about it. It's a done deal, really. It's in the pipeline. But yeah, for what it's worth, I think dual citizenship is a crock of shit, and we should leave the Australian Constitution exactly as it is. And I think everybody who is elected to Parliament should be vetted by ASIO when they are returned by the Electoral Commission. So it should become such a well-known hurdle that is applied at that stage that everybody who stands for election will go and check into their own personal citizenship details and renounce any foreign citizenships. That's what I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't reckon I am. I reckon that's fair dues. Warbles on a lot to YouTube, such as the state of the art. Ciao.